Welcome back to anyone who's going to go even further with R. In this video, we're going to take a look at R Notebook, and this is a way to write notes along with your R code and sort of produce reports all in one. This is not something I usually use. However, I have written the subject notes in something similar to this, actually Book Down, not Notebook, just because it's got so many pages in it. However, you can try this. This is the default notebook page, and it's got a different extension. So it's RMD for R Markdown. Markdown is like markup, except not as much. To me, it's the wrong name because Markdown sounds like it's going in the opposite direction of markup, but it's not. I don't know who came up with that name, but I don't like it. So if you want to start off with a default R notebook, go to File, New File, and R Notebook. And this is what you get by default. So it tells us the title is R Notebook. So we could change this to Stat 1005, oops, Week 2. It's going to give us the HTML version and the Word version. That's fine. Let's just leave that. And what this will do is, if we preview it, it will produce a nice little document. So this is the HTML version, but it can also produce a Word version and a PDF if you want it. So the knitting, as far as I understand it, will actually run all the code, whereas the preview will just take whatever you've already done and pop it in the preview window, but it won't actually run this code. So we haven't actually run this code yet. So in the preview, it's not going to show us what this plot looks like. So let's go through this help file one little bit at a time, and then we'll add some bits in. I'm not going to do all of it. I'll leave that as an exercise for you, but we'll do a couple of bits and pieces. So when you execute code within the notebook, the results appear beneath the code. Now this is quite handy because, as we saw before, when we were executing stuff over here, things were appearing all over the place, in the console, in the plots window, in the viewer window. It was a bit much. If you want to have a chunk of code, you have to tell it that it's a chunk of code, and that's with this syntax here. The I want to say apostrophe, I hope. The single quote mark, 3 of them, and then the R. And there's some other options that we can put in here, but I won't go into that in this video. So we can add our own chunk of code by clicking the Insert Chunk button on the toolbar. Where's the Insert Chunk button? I can't see it. I'm going to use the Control-Alt-I. And it did a chunk. There we go. Or you can actually just type it out old school. Oh, I'm still in caps lock. And honestly, I often do this because I can gather my thoughts while I'm thinking, what am I going to put in this chunk of code? And we'll put this in here. So we've got 2 chunks of code ready to set up. So how is this going to work? It means that we can see what we're doing in the window, and then we can preview it all into one document. Now, CARS is a default set of data that's already part of R, and it knows what it is. So that's why there's no load in or read in the data option here, because it already knows the CARS data. So if we run this chunk, we get a nice graph. And now if we preview our document, we can see that the command and the graph has appeared in our document. So we can sort of write everything that we're thinking and get the output all in one place. So let's try inserting our own chunk. And it's just giving us a note here that preview shows you anything that you've already run. The way they've written this sentence is backwards. I think rather than telling you what something doesn't do, they should just tell you what it does. Preview does not run any code chunks, and then say knitting runs the code chunks. That would be much easier to read. So you could go through and delete all this information when you make your own version of the week 2, but let's go through and copy some commands across. So this was our week 2 code. Now, if you've already got this Read Excel package installed, we don't need to install it again. So I'm just going to leave that, and I'm going to read in the apples data. Let's show the header information. That'll do for a chunk. Oh, look, it looks beautiful. So the other thing that we can do, apart from putting the commands, is actually format it nicely. So section 1. This is giving us a nice title or subtitles. So rather than section 1, let's call this activity 1. And then we could have a subtitle, part 1, reading in the data. And so we're getting an outline of our document here. Just toggle that on and off if you're not seeing it. We don't really need all of this stuff over on the side anymore. So if you were writing a report, this would be handy to format the title. So let's preview that. And we've got these headers ready to go. Now, it might be that you don't get exactly the report you want just in R, but if you can save it to Word and it's keeping all your level 1, 2, and 3 titles, that's going to save you a bit of time. So we can put in the titles, the subtitles, etc. that we want there. I'm not going to do any more here. I think that's enough if you want to get started and have a play with it. Let me know how you go with it. I'm curious to know what you think about it if you're a student who has gone through all of the stuff this week and you've tried both the code and the notebook. And also if you tried Jamovi as well, let me know what you think of the 3 of them compared with each other. If you've watched this video and then decided that you're going to dip and this is not something you want to try, that's totally okay. If you're in engineering or other parts of science or education, it's quite possible that you will never have to see R ever again. If you're in data science or actuarial science, I'm not sure about the financial maths. I don't know if you guys use it. You probably use a lot of Excel, but depending on what discipline you're in, you may have to use a lot of R in the rest of your degree, or you may not. So I guess you could ask your other lecturers, you could ask your course lead, or you could ask 2nd and 3rd year students if they ever had to use it again, if you know any.